we're kind of the canaries in the coal mine. We hear everything, and we are the first people to talk to customers, and we are the last people to talk to customers, and we touch every single place in the business. There is no part of the business that support does not touch in some way, does not influence in some way. And so despite that, we are often kind of ignored because we are often staffed by people who look like you and me, who are underpaid, who maybe didn't come with a Ivy League degree, who don't have MBAs, like all of that stuff. We didn't come from McKinsey. We are not business consultants. And so even though we have really, really vital like intelligence about customers, we have, really, really vital wisdom about customers and about how things are going and how the business is actually going. We just tend to be ignored.
Welcome to Epochal Growth. This is Sarah Caminiti, and I am so happy that you're here on the very first two-parter Epochal Growth episode. Yes, you listened to that correctly. Stephanie Lundberg and I have been hinting at this for some time now. The day has finally arrived. Part 1 of The Art of Being Dead Inside is finally here, listeners. I hope you're ready for this. I am so happy that you're here. If you're new to Epochal Growth, awesome place to start. If you're coming back, thank you for coming back. I know that some of you have been on the hunt for this. I know that I have been just waiting for Steph to give me the okay to release this. It's a special episode. I had a lot of fun editing this. I was sending Steph clips throughout the entire process. Clips that are going to be uploaded to the new Epochal Growth YouTube page. So if you were following on growth support, stay following on growth support because Neil has some awesome content. But now there's going to be an Epochal Growth YouTube page. It's going to be where I share all of the clips that I pull. It's going to be where there's extra little bits and pieces and also the full episodes. Please follow on the YouTube page if you're a YouTube person. Apple and Spotify, staying the same. But The Art of Being Dead Inside. Yeah, that's the actual title, and it's going to be very relevant throughout the entire conversation for part 1 and part 2. Stephanie is the support human herself. She's brave. Stephanie is brave. Stephanie talks a lot about being brave and how scary it is to be brave sometimes. And it's something that we need to be more vocal about, because when the folks that do brave things don't talk about the reality of being brave, the scariness, the hesitation, the anxiety that's attached to being brave, then everybody that's on the fence of doing something out of their comfort zone, of trying something for the first time, is going to think that these feelings are too big. They're not supposed to be doing these wonderful, incredible, change-making things because they're scared. But you're supposed to be scared. It's normal to be scared. Sometimes conversations are perfectly concise and quick and powerful in their own small package. Sometimes those packages are extra large, and I did not realize that I was going to be given such an extra large gift from Stephanie Lundberg when we got on that 9:00 at night call and really met for the first time. And so if you're looking for a listen for something that is a little bit bolder, is a little bit more vulnerable, then this is going to be a really fun conversation for you. Part 2 will be coming soon, and I can't wait. I am editing it right now. I may put a couple little sneak previews up on the YouTube page. Even more reason for you to start subscribing to the Epochal Growth YouTube page. At the end of this podcast, I am going to ask for some help. So listen all the way if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. Watch all the way if you're on YouTube. I'm in a transition period. It's an exciting period. I'm stopping now. The time has come. Epochal Growth, Episode 8, The Art of Being Dead Inside, Part 1 with Stephanie Lundberg, the support human, is starting now.
I'm Steph Lundberg. I've been in support for about 10 years now. I think I started in August of 2014. So that'll be my 10-year anniversary. And I got into it because I'm a military spouse. I've talked about this in other places. And as a military spouse who kind of changed careers at like the worst possible time in about 2007, 2008, I was a journalist. It was like the worst time to be a journalist because the economy was in shambles, and like everybody who was a print journalist everything was kind of shifting to online, and everything was very, very competitive. It's still pretty competitive now, but exceedingly competitive then. And I sort of realized that the various things that I was trying, like going to other things. That was back in 2008. So I switched to nursing for a while, and I tried to do that, and that didn't quite work out because you have to be in one place to go to nursing school. And so I got into nursing school a couple of times, and one time was like in orientation for nursing school, and my husband called me and said, hey, I got stationed somewhere else, you might as well just leave, because nursing school is also very competitive, so you don't want to hold a spot for somebody if you can kind of open that up for someone. So I did that. I was a CNA, I was an EMT. What else did I do? I did a lot of stuff before I very intentionally went into support, because I was looking for something that I could do remotely, because that was a big deal. When you move from place to place to place, you have to start over basically every single time. And that's really, really hard to do. And then also I got to like talk to people and be really techie and nerdy, because I've always been really techie and nerdy. I got my start in computers when I was like probably a little too young on the internet, getting into like fandom and writing fan fiction and like getting with my friends all over the world. And I really liked that. I liked being online and terminally online and doing all that sort of stuff. So so I was looking for things that I could do remotely and that was kind of techie. And at the time in like 2014, the options were like, okay, you go into coding, which I've always kind of wanted to do, and I kind of pushed myself that way even when I was kind of a youngster. But like there's a lot of investment in that, and when you're a military spouse and you need to be employed as soon as possible, like you're looking for an easier in, and coding required a lot of investment in time and in money when it boot camps and stuff. Anyway, so I figured out, okay, support's a good in, and I worked for a company called Metaverse Mod Squad doing like moderation and all of that, and very eye-opening and fun and that sort of thing. And that was kind of how I came into tech and moved into various different kind of positions from there, but always staying in tech and in customer support. And I love doing kind of within that realm. I really like doing like knowledge-based stuff, and I love communication work, writing, because that's kind of where I came from. That was my, I grew up in writing and doing all that stuff. So that was the very long explanation of, who I am and how I got into customer support. So
No. I will say, Steph, like your career trajectory is so common, honestly, in the support community. I mean, I'm sure you know this as well. But you'll notice like within every single space that you went, there was a common theme of being someone that is helping others be successful or navigate things or understand things. And that is the root of a true support professional. We have to love that piece of it to want to create a career out of it. And your entry, and it was right in that time when the world of support professionals was kind of being born.
Definitely
outside of like retail and that sort of space. And so you came at such a perfect time in your knowledge of understanding how to compose communications was, I'm sure, what set you apart so much in the community, because you have to know how to deliver a message in a very specific way to be a successful communicator to customers.
Yeah. And the first real support job, not that Metaverse Mod Squad wasn't like a real support job, but it wasn't talking directly with customers in the way that I was. It was with a company called Pro Trainings, and I did phone support and chat support and email support. And that was really, really fun because they all require different methods of connecting with people, I would say. And so phone support is always really challenging because it's so emotionally draining, because to connect with somebody on that level, it's very intense. It's very in the moment. You have to be very on all the time. Um, and so even like the writing part didn't really come into it for me. I really, really liked that. I really kind of flourished in phone support, but it was also very draining for me because um, I seem very outgoing, but I'm not really. It's very draining for me to talk one-on-one with people. And then, so it's probably why I kind of drift towards writing a lot. But I loved chat support. I could do chat support all day long without a break. It was just fantastic. Yeah, I loved it. It was fun. I got to like have a personality with customers, and not everybody, because some people, especially what Pro Trainings did, because they were a first aid and CPR company, and they worked a lot with professionals like nursing professionals, doctor professionals, but we also worked with like moms and grandmothers and grandfathers who are like babysitting their children or fostering their children or grandchildren, that sort of thing. And they had to have these first aid and CPR certifications in order to do that. And they're not really necessarily tech savvy folks. And so, and not necessarily just older, but anybody coming to you like in this thing, they may not necessarily be tech savvy. And so, having a personality in that moment is not really the priority. Like the priority is getting them what they need and getting them where they need to go, and like making sure they understand everything in as low stress an environment as possible. And this is like, that can be very high stress for folks, technology, because if you don't understand something and you don't understand something for a really long period of time, like you just start to feel really dumb, and that's stressful, and it's just really dispiriting and demoralizing. And so like being able to be the person, be like, hey, no, this is literally hard for everybody. Like there's a reason why I'm here. There's a reason why I'm employed, because this can be hard for everybody. And so like, I'm here to help you and like get you over this hump and get you where you need to go. So that part I really loved too. But like, I remember when I was doing chat support for Pro Trainings, there was this one guy who, I don't even remember how he got onto it. I have a screenshot of the conversation somewhere, but we were like pretending to be, he was like Superman and I was Wonder Woman. And we were just like role playing this chat through this first aid CPR thing. And it was like, it was just great. It was so silly, and it was so like, but it was just very uplifting, and like the stakes were really low, and we got him what he needed, and it was really fun. But like, you could do stuff like that in a way it's a little weird if you're doing that over the phone. It feels a little odd. Like that's not really a venue for that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I where you were spending your time in the company with the folks that you were interacting with, what an incredibly like meaningful service you were providing for them, because not only were these non-technical people coming to you for help with something that they didn't understand on a computer level, but if you were communicating with grandparents or people that were trying to get certification to help their family members in their time of need, what a scary and extra level of panic stress that would be on these people anytime they had to come to you, because if they didn't succeed in this, then they would not be able to get the certifications necessary to become a foster parent. And so that must have been a very emotionally draining space on that level for you as well.
Oh, it certainly could be. And I think we all kind of, we're all in sort of, I would say in professions, no matter like what space we're in, we all kind of get that feeling at some point. Like, first aid and CPR it can be very high stakes. Like people can lose their licenses if they don't have the proper certifications and they don't keep them up to date and that sort of thing. But, I've worked for, I worked for a design tech company where the stakes were just as high, because like if you lose a client because you can't get them the designs on time and on budget, that's high stakes for this person, right? Like that's a big deal for them. And, I did a contract with a, alcohol and drug recovery program. And like, that's very high stakes and
Very.
very, very rewarding, but it can be really stressful because you're talking with people who desperately need the service that you're providing. And you really need to make sure like that you are, understanding what their needs are and you're connecting them with the right people. And, so I don't think it's just, I think we all are like, at some point we sort of, feel that stress of it. And that kind of makes customer support unique in that way. And that, sometimes we say, we're not, it's not rocket science or it's not life or death. But sometimes it is life or death. And sometimes it's, maybe the life or death of a company.
Right.
And so we want to keep things on a scale, right? On a regular scale of things. But, it's always in the back of my mind when I'm talking to people or when I'm talking to my team or anything like that. Like the stakes, you never know what the stakes are, and you never know how someone's coming to you. That's one
Yes.
thing. We were talking about Mercer Smith's book, CXOXO, before when we were, kind of chatting before we started. But one of the things that she says that I really love, she's talked about this, I think, a couple of times, is how you never know what customers have experienced by the time they've gotten to you, or you don't know what emotional state that they're in, or just kind of what their circumstances are. And like, so we get a lot of people who just are not behaving well. Like, just frankly, they are not behaving well with us. And it's really important to have, solid boundaries with them. Like, you don't want to take abuse. Like, that's not okay. But it's something that I've always been really, really cognizant of, even with some of the worst interactions I've ever had with customers, and I've had to fire customers and all of that. It's always something that's in the back of my mind where, people are coming to us because they need help, because they need support, and we already know that they're not at their best, right? We know that they're
Right.
stressed out about something, they don't understand something, they need to get something done and they can't, and that's why they're reaching out to us. And so that's always something that's, in the back of my mind. And I always like to hear other people's perspectives too. Like, how do you think about this? Like, what do you think when people come to you and you're stressed out too because you want to give them the answer and you can't give them the answer, or they need something that you can't give them? Like, how do you handle that? Like, how does that make you feel, and all of that?
Oh, I love that. I love that you brought that up, and it is something that I make such a humongous deal about when I'm training people on my teams. I train developers to be support professionals for years, and that was one of the things that I kept having to remind them of. It's this person could have just like not been able to get to their coffee cup before the coffee got cold all
Mm-hmm.
morning, or they could have forgot to pack their kid's lunch the right way, and they know that their kid is not going to eat anything that they put in that lunchbox. Like, taking away even just the product or the situation itself, the other person is a person. And think about how
Mm-hmm.
those little things in your day impact how you interact with others or you approach situations. So taking that pause and, like, this has nothing to do with you. You have zero responsibility for this person's behaviors or this person's mood. If you can make their day a little bit better, awesome, but sometimes you're not going to. And that's
Yeah.
okay too. Like, do your best, ask for help, and you've done your job and you've done it really well. And
Yeah.
that's something that you always have to be thinking about. I love that you said that you have to be cognizant of that at all times, because we are here when folks hit that point where they can no longer be successful independently. We
Yeah.
are that space where they have to be vulnerable enough to say, I can't do this, and now I have to wait and figure out if someone's actually going to be able to help me get what I need to have done. And that's such a big responsibility. And I don't think that we say it enough, how big of a responsibility support is on
Mm-hmm.
just really the success of other people's days.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yes. Yeah. And I think, you touched on like the vulnerability part of it. That's so I've kind of built my whole career on vulnerability.
I love
Like,
it.
which is really hard because like it's, I mean, being vulnerable all the time is not fun. Like it's just not fun.
No.
And like in customer support folks, we have to be more vulnerable than most. And
Mhm.
it's just like that's why so many of us burn out so quickly, I
Yeah.
think. And I don't think that support is like a dead end job. And I keep referencing other people, so I apologize. But Brian Levine, who used to be my
Reference
boss at
away.
Abstract, he used to be my boss at Abstract. He's now working with another coworker of mine on Yeto, and I'm shouting them out only because they wrote a blog post on their Yeto blog about this, about how support kind of ironically is a dead end job. And part of the reason that they called out that it's not really, but sometimes feels that way is because, customer support is so vital and so important, but it's so devalued, but we put so much of ourselves into it that we lose our ability to keep going at that pace. I think
Yeah.
we get burned out, and like we don't plan for how are we going to decompress along the way, how are we going to take care of ourselves along the way, like how are we not just taking care of ourselves, but how are we looking after our team members, how are we looking after our direct reports, like are we giving them breaks, are we giving them space to vent, are we giving them pay raises, are they getting professional development, are they feeling like they're growing, like all of those things are important when you're, like I said earlier, like when you're on all the time, like there has to be some reward from that. You have to see the fruits of your labor from that. And so, yeah, it's such a big thing, but like vulnerability is such a big part of it. You can't be a support person without being vulnerable and without being open to that. And it's very hard to figure out where the limit is and where can you build boundaries that are healthy, but without like, you know, my coworker that works with Brian, Nick and I, we joke around about a lot about being dead inside. Like we're just dead inside now sometimes because, things that
Yeah.
used to bother us, they don't bother us anymore because I'm 10 years into this. I think he's, 10, 15 years into this. And so how do you stay vulnerable when you're dead inside? I don't know. That's a hard thing.
Well,
So
it's a
yeah.
shift though. Like it's a shift. I think that it is so important to have folks that are building teams be veterans, like true
Yes.
veterans.
Yeah.
Because once you hit that point, and I've hit it too, and I've been able to reflect on what it actually means and use that as a way to just kind of refocus how I interact outside of work too. Like I don't have to take
Mm-hmm.
everything so personally. Everyone is not working against me. Like I am just a person in this community, and everyone else is just
Yeah.
trying to do their best too. But at the same time, you have to be able to be in that headspace to
Mm-hmm.
be advocates for your team.
Yeah.
Because if you start reading into everything, and if you can't see this like interaction
Mm-hmm.
from a very like no bias, like I am just reading this without any emotion,
Yeah.
then you can't talk to the other person about it. You can't even enter into that conversation with the customer because you're already heated, and then what's the point of you even joining the conversation?
Yeah.
But it's in as gross as it is to say that you're dead inside once you hit a certain point in your career, it is such a gift because you're able to
Yeah.
focus on facts, and you're able to
Yes.
help others not take 10 years to get to your point, this headspace, and see it as a positive way to maybe make support more of that value space, and focus on the data and the analytics and driving that part of the change rather than just the emotional aspect. But it's a journey. It is a
Yeah.
long journey to
Yeah.
get there.
I think that's why I think so much about like vulnerability and being really, really honest. Because like, I've gotten to this point in my career where I sort of realized like apathy is really easy at this point in my career. And it's sort of it's the enemy of vulnerability and it's the enemy of connection. And And I sort of feel myself kind of the being dead inside to certain things is good. It's like being dead inside to feeling like everything is life and death when it's not, because it's very easy when you're early in your career where like everything is coming at you. You're doing multiple chats, you're getting multiple calls, the queue is really high, customers can be really demanding, your boss can be really demanding, like when everything feels very, very raw, right? And like that can be very, very stressful. And so being sort of dead to that and understanding, okay, this is not life and death. Some of this is very, very important and some of this is not very important. And I've gotten to the point in my career where I can understand which is which most of the time. Not all of the time, but most of the time I can do that. But I think the danger with that is that you can get very apathetic to customers themselves, and I have felt that myself, where I have to be intentionally um, you know, um, open and gentle and feeling. And I am not a person I don't like being emotional. I don't like it. I don't like being tender. It upsets me. Like I had a day of last week where I just was on the urge of crying all day, and I don't know why, but like I hate crying. I hate it. And my husband, he's like, sometimes babe, you got to cry. Just let it out. And I'm like, but you don't understand. I hate crying. But like you have to, like, sometimes you just have to be emotional, and sometimes you just have to like let yourself feel things. And I hate having to feel things. But like with customers, you have to let yourself feel things. Like you have to, like, that's how you connect with them, right? Like you have to let yourself feel things. And so I feel, I think about that a lot, about how to balance, being, I hate the term professional because I think that comes with a lot of baggage that we at some point as a profession need to unpack, or just in tech in general needs to unpack. But I've gotten to the point in my career where I feel fairly professional, and I feel like I can take a step back from things and not immediately react to things. But I think that sometimes creates a distance that's not useful to me or to customers. And so I think that's why I think about it so much, is because it can get in the way of me doing my job well.
That is, I love that you said that, because I've been thinking about this a lot the last few days, and I was trying to figure out how to talk about it with anybody because I want to know if maybe this epiphany that I had is really an epiphany at all, or if it's just me being a crazy person. But I think a lot about navigating conversations and how support professionals, especially in leadership, have to understand how to navigate situations on such a complex level, and how we interact with other departments on such a complex and high stakes level. Because if we do something wrong one time, often that might be our last chance for a little while. We're just starting to get involved and invited to things, and we have to make it count every time. And we also have to demonstrate to other departments how to communicate and how to listen and absorb and be more of a community rather than each individual space. And being in support has provided us with this really unique opportunity to test things. And if we think about our conversations, especially if we've been in this space for a while, as experiments, we're interacting with all kinds of people in all different spaces in their careers, in their mental headspace. Who cares who you are? You are a human being that we are talking to, and we have to convey information to you that is digestible, but also to remind you that you are safe to ask questions. You are safe to come back. And if you're angry, it's okay to be angry. I hear you. I would probably be angry if I was in your situation too. This sucks, but this is the rule, and there's nothing I can do about it. But do you find yourself, when you're thinking about, how to navigate the lack of emotion to certain things and overreacting to certain things, but also realizing that everybody's just a human, that your time and support has set you up for success in this regard, because we have the data in the back of our head, and we're able to lean into the things that we know work?
Sometimes I think it just makes it make some I started doing a newsletter. We talked a little bit about this as well before we started. I started doing the Support Human Roundup. And as part of that, started doing something called Bad Job Bingo. We can get to that in a minute. But to answer your question, I think sometimes it makes me more effective, and sometimes my time in support and my time in tech in general, I feel like sometimes it just makes it easier for me to see where the fault lines are, which is not always the best thing, right? So
Yeah.
support often does not have the power that it should have to fix things and to bring people together. And so you can make suggestions, you can make recommendations, you can advise people on things, but it's the leadership's. And when you're a consultant, it's very much like this as well. Like, you can make recommendations, you can give advice, and then you can give the reasoning for that advice. But it's really up to the leadership that you're speaking with to make the changes or to accept that advice, and to put that advice into action. And so sometimes I feel like it makes me very skilled at leading a horse to water, if that makes sense, like guiding people where they need to
Yep.
go, and in other teams, in, senior leadership teams. And sometimes I think it makes me the thorn in the side of somebody who doesn't want to hear it. And so
That's a great
that
point.
can be that can be really tough, right? And that all comes down to, organizational culture. It comes down to, how much support is valued. We're kind of the canaries in the coal mine. We hear everything, and we are the first people to talk to customers, and we are the last people to talk to customers, and we touch every single place in the business. There is no part of the business that support does not touch in some way, does not influence in some way. And so despite that, we are often kind of ignored, because we are often staffed by people who look like you and me, who are underpaid, who maybe didn't come with a Ivy League degree, who don't have MBAs, like all of that stuff. We didn't come from McKinsey. We are not business consultants. And so even though we have really, really vital intelligence about customers, we have, really, really vital wisdom about customers and about how things are going and how the business is actually going, we just tend to be ignored because it's kind of a potluck in terms of was your leadership doing support by themselves before they hired you? Do they really have a good idea of what support is? If you are lucky enough to get into a company that did that, they really understand how important support is. They will listen to you, and you can have a really good relationship. You can have a really fantastic relationship with other teams because it's kind of built into the DNA of the company. But sometimes, I've been brought from the outside into companies, and it's really up to the leadership. It's really up to the company culture whether or not they're going to avail themselves of the wisdom that we bring to the table. And so it's one of those things where I've gotten very, I don't want to say cynical, but maybe really realistic about it. Very, very practical, where I don't go in with any expectations anymore. Which makes me kind of sad because I want to go in with expectations. But so yeah, it's kind of it's I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like a two-sided sword or something. I don't know how you would say it. It gives me, I feel like it does give me a lot of insight, but it doesn't give me a lot of power, if that makes sense.
I'm so happy that I've met you, because this is so much what I feel, and to be in a space where I can talk candidly with someone like you, Steph, is such a gift. As a woman in this world, uh, it's different. I mean, there's so many levels of and layers of presentation and respect and just invitation for anything. And even if it is an invite, it's never really, or not, I won't say never, it is often not an invite, and it is a balcony seat.
Yeah.
And that is something, as a support professional, you feel always, and often it's you just kind of give up. I think unless you are, really someone that moves up in the space to start to interact with the other people and get to know them as people so that you can understand maybe a little bit more context. But if you're in a large company and you're just an IC and you're someone that gets that vibe of you're replaceable because the turnover is so high, and that's going to carry. That's going to carry. And unfortunately, those folks usually don't stay in support long. And those folks then move to other departments and start their careers there. And because they were never shown that support is valuable, even though they were in it, they were so demoralized from the experience that odds are they are going to continue to function just the same way everybody else always has. And it's one of the things that I just want so much for the future of my space in this community, to remind people that we can do it differently. Like we can do it differently. And I'm so sick of seeing so much content explaining a why behind something, or just admitting that something exists, but there is not a single thing being done about it. It's just, being loud. It's noise, and it's noise that makes the people that are doing the actual work and the change and they're fighting for it, they get silenced because there's so much noise. And it is one of the biggest punches to the gut to be in support, to see it all, to feel it all, because no matter how dead inside we are, we do still feel it all. Like because we have the data to back up the feelings, and nothing changes.
Yeah. I think that's why, and adding to the noise, genuinely, I'm probably just adding to the noise. No, I think that's why I started doing Bad Job Bingo, though. Like,
that's not adding to the noise. I don't mean to interrupt you, Steph. I don't want you to continue down this path. You are one of the reasons why I felt more empowered to say the quiet stuff out loud, because the reason why people that are not white men from Ivy League schools are staying in the same place that they always have, regardless of whether or not they have a title now or not, it's still probably the same, is because we are so nervous to rock the boat, and we still approach everything as like they are giving us a gift. They are taking a chance. We got lucky. It is not something that we earned, and we deserve this respect and this space. And your Bad Job Bingo was when I first started reading it, it was like, holy cow, someone is actually taking the time to advocate for us. And like, to say that these terms are not good terms. And when you see this culture, it is not necessarily good culture. It's just noise. And so, no, Steph, you are 100% not contributing to the noise. You are the person driving change. And it's because you were vulnerable enough to be open to being loud about the stuff that matters. And that's why I was so pumped to have you on this show.
Oh, thank you so much. Because like when you were talking about, we still think of it as, we should be grateful, we should be thankful. I think that's honestly, genuinely the thing that got me as I was, just working in general in support, but also as I was looking for roles and interviewing. And the last year and a half for everybody has been really, really tough, and it's been especially tough for support people in tech. There have been so many layoffs, and like that was just kind of the tone of every interview. Not every interview, I should take that back. A lot of the interviews, not all of them, but a lot of the interviews was, just be grateful that you're here, and like 95% of the job descriptions I was coming across, it was very, very rare to come across I like to put it candidate first, because it's not that the companies themselves are bad, because it's sort of a trend. Like, no single company is bad. I'm gonna like, I don't think any single company is bad. There are some that are obviously scams. The ones that are obviously scams, those are bad. I'm very comfortable saying that. But the other ones, they're just kind of following the trends that everybody else is doing, right? And that's why not talking about the trends and not talking about the general like tone of things and the general way things are being done, that's why that's the problem. It's not the individual companies that are the problem. It's that we're not acknowledging that the way we're doing this and the way we're treating people that's the problem. That's the issue. Like, we're not gonna pick on like the Googles and the Facebooks. Like, they have outsized influence, yes, absolutely, but like, just picking on them or picking on any single company is not going to change things. But we have to talk about the trends and the themes and all of that. So we have to be really, really honest about that. And it is really terrifying. It is really, really scary for it was scary for me. It still is very scary for me. But it's scary for any single person to be the one to not just be the first person to mention it at all. Like, to say like, hey, I'm a person, and as a candidate, I deserve better than this. Like, I don't deserve a job, but I do deserve to be treated like a person and treated like somebody who, we live in a country where you have to have a job in order to survive. You literally have to be paid a salary in order to buy food, and you have to have a employment in order to have health insurance. And it's not being ungrateful to say that out loud and acknowledge that fact. And because that is true, there is a certain contract that should exist between candidates and potential employers that does not currently exist. And so for me, and when I first started doing it, it's still very scary. Like, I just got a new job, which is really fantastic, but I don't say where I work. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm very, very happy about it. I love the place that I work, but I won't say where I work, because I don't want it to be one of those things where, one, I don't want to be considered speaking on behalf of any company that I've ever worked for, not just this company, but any company that I've ever worked for. I'm always speaking as an individual, as my own person. Especially any bad takes, they're always mine. They're never anybody else's. Like, but also because it's really scary. Like, you can say something really reasonable, like, hey, if a job is being mean to you, you can quit that job. And that's controversial. Like, I said that on LinkedIn, and that was very controversial. Just saying like, hey, if you take a job just for the salary and you quit it to get a better job, like, these companies that will hire you for a little while, and once they get their use out of you, they fire you. Like, that was controversial. So, like, even saying really basic stuff about people's worth as candidates, or people's worth as workers, which I'm sounding very socialist right now, but like, people's work is just people, is very, very dangerous. It can be very dangerous. And so yeah, that's obviously I could speak on this forever, but like, that was my thing. Is we got to be honest about what is happening, right? We have to be honest about the themes. We're not obviously there's a certain amount of entertainment that's involved in bad job bingo, because when you are demoralized as a job seeker, if you've been like, I think I was at month 8 or 9 by the time I got my job. I know people who've been looking for far longer. And so there is, and especially for support people, very, very few things are specifically for us as support people. And so we kind of just have to make do with other things for like engineers and for, product managers. And those are lovely, lovely people, lovely, lovely jobs. But like, we deserve something that's just ours, I think. But yeah, so there's a certain amount of entertainment to kind of get people over the weekly hump, and just to give them something to laugh about, like, and just to say, hey, you see that silly thing over there about I don't even know, like, promising $10 an hour for 80 hours a week as a head of support. Like, That's ridiculous. We both know that's ridiculous, right? Like,
They
that's
know
not a
that's
real job.
ridiculous. They're
Exactly.
just
They know
gonna
that's ridiculous.
they're testing the waters to see what they
Yeah,
can get.
exactly. And so it's yeah, there's got to be an element of entertainment. Like there's got to be an element of making people laugh. Um and 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 so that's like that's part of bad job bingo too. Is that yeah, there absolutely has to be an element of making people laugh in this. Otherwise it's just relentless misery. And
Yeah.
no one wants relentless misery. I don't want relentless misery. I want to celebrate you
Yes.
know, and that's the thing I love about Bad Job Bingo too, is that it gives me an opportunity to celebrate really, really great job descriptions. Like really, really great people who are obviously working hard to be candidate first and like are doing their best. Like they're just, and everybody's doing their best, right? Anyway, so I could go on. I can ramble about
And
this however long you want me to.
I mean, my kids are asleep. We can ramble for all day long or all night long. But dang, you touch on so many things that I'm so passionate about because it is it is bullshit. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
bullshit.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that I've been trying this new thing of poorly talking to the camera for the first time in my life, of like on the phone and like letting my words out into the open,
Yeah.
and I go back and I look at it and I look so angry in all of these videos, and
I know.
I'm not an angry person, but I'm so
And
angry when
I'm
I'm
so
talking
glad you
about this.
mentioned that. Genuinely, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I worry about that every issue, which has only been it's only been like maybe 7 or 8 issues. I have to count. I don't even remember how many issues of Support Human Roundup there's been. But every single issue, I'm so worried about that. And that's why like I go back and I have, trusted friends.
I know. I left you with a cliffhanger. This is the end of part 1 of The Art of Being Dead Inside with Steph Lundberg, the support human herself. Part 2 of The Art of Being Dead Inside, that's episode 9 of Epochal Growth, will be released on Friday, June 28th on YouTube and Spotify and Apple Podcasts, so be on the lookout. Make sure that if you haven't subscribed or followed, you've done so. You're probably going to notice that there is a new YouTube page that just is for Epochal Growth, and it also is going to be the home of way more clips than what you're seeing on LinkedIn. Feel free to give me some feedback. I'm still learning. And speaking of learning, you're probably going to be seeing some changes in the coming weeks with colors and cover art and branding. And if there is anyone out there in the Epochal Growth community that knows anything about podcasting and branding and that sort of marketing area of the world, I would love to have a conversation because I am very new to this space and I want to make sure that I'm doing it right. And I am allowing listeners to find Epochal Growth because I would love to introduce them to the wonderful people that are guests on this show with me. I'm really excited to see what's coming up for Epochal Growth and the information and the people and the wonderful stories that I'm going to share with you, show you what's possible when you try. Because just because you haven't seen it doesn't mean it's not happening, and change is possible. Thank you so much for spending some time with me, for spending extra time with me this week, and I can't wait to see you soon.